So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live show, Impromptu Sunday. I thought I'd play I'm going to colour with children's pound shop watercolours. Let me just pan out a bit. So what I've done is I sprayed twice these little thin pans, and they're from the pound shop, but I wasn't excited about the colours. It was the palettes I wanted. So I had originally decided to just get hubby to wash them out, but there's quite a deep, this one's a little bit deeper. I'll get my ruler in a bit. I think it's about maybe 5 millimeters deep. This one's about 3. But they remind me, I mean, they won't be as good quality, obviously, but they remind me of the Tim Holtz Inky. I bought them for my Hydrus and also for inks. But I decided that instead of just throwing them out, I have coloured before, and you'd be quite pleasantly surprised. I've mixed colours. But I've decided that I want to do something quick and I want to use them up. So this is me being frivolous. So I've sprayed them. So we've got about half a dozen. We've got yellows, oranges. There's half a dozen greens, half a dozen blues, half a dozen reds, half a dozen pinks. So actually, it's a really good. I think there's 48 on here. So it's a really good range. But I really want them because I want to put my Hydrus in here, and I want to put some ink colours in here. So I thought I didn't want to buy an expensive palette. It might not work, so I thought I'd buy these. So I sprayed them, and I was looking at one of the colours, and I was thinking to hubby to wash it out, and I can't think which colour it is now. It's not the pink, it was a red. I may have to use different brushes, I think. Just bear with me a second. This brush doesn't look particularly clean. I don't think it was that one. Now you can tell these that they're a bit stickier because it's the pigment. Oh, that one's gone really creamy, that one. So that's a pink, although it looks a red. But I was inspired by one of them for the pink flamingos, so I thought I would use these colours. And you can tell that there is definitely a nasty pigment in there, but these are for kids. But I thought if you wanted to, you've got pastels or you've got or pencils, and you wanted to have a go at watercolouring in a colour book. So that's not watercolours, this is just colouring in a colour book. Then I thought, why not try the pound shop ones, because you not broke the bank, you cost a couple of pounds of the paintbrushes, and that's going to enable you to have a play to see if you like them. Then if you like them, you can buy an expensive set. And I always think you should try, for some reason my light's gone a bit iffy, you should always kind of try with a cheaper version, because you may not like it. So I have with me, I'm going to work in the Johanna Basford's Magical Jungle. And again, I was inspired because of the pink in this children's set to do the pink flamingos. Now I'll probably be using these completely different because we won't get that lovely watercolour effect, because you get that with stronger pigments, and these definitely aren't stronger pigments, but we still should be able to do something okay. So I've got an Art Master Pearl, number 6, number 4 and number 2, and they are series 11, and they're kind of like a round brush. And then I have my half rigger at series 64, a Pro Art number 20. So that's given me a fat, a medium and a thin, and then it's given me a tiny one because there's some small spaces in there as well. So I've got my trusty little pot of water, I've got my little baby wipe on a dish, and I'll zoom in and you can see the colours. So I'm going to colour this particular page in with these children's ones. And I just want to prove that you can do this if you really want to have a play. You don't have to buy an expensive set. And if you didn't want to buy just 3 or 6 colours to mix, if you didn't want a colour mix, then this is the best option to first have a play. So I'll make sure that we're in frame and we are in colour. So I think I will start with the pink flamingo. That's possibly a good place to start. I may start with the tail. So again, you look at the brush. Which brush are we going to use? So we've got 6, 4 and 2 and the smaller one. So what determines, I like to have a set of brushes, and these are a couple of pounds each, and I have alternate numbers. So if I had a 1, I would have 1, 3 and 5, because there isn't too much of a difference between the ones next to each other, but when you miss a number you get a nice different array. So you don't have to buy a full set. Instead of buying 6, you can either buy 1, 5 and it depends what they have in the shop, and it also depends on what the brushes look like. So to me, I like those. I think that's quite a nice set. And then of course I've got my thin one if I want to put a little bit of detail in, and that seems to be quite a nice little set. So I think I'm going with the number 2 because it's the smallest one of the set. And I dunk it into water, I drag slowly back, and as I do, I twist. And that gives me a beautiful wet point, barely damp, and I can pick up colour. Now these will be slightly different because they're going to be a bit tacky, but we'll have a go. So I think I used, I don't know which one it was now, and I did spray them earlier, so I sprayed them about 3 times, but I have quite a lot of light here. So I use, again, pound shop. I bought these quite a few years ago. I bought 8 for £1, and surprisingly, obviously I've washed them out. I bought them for the girls at school so that they could clean their hands before they had their lunch. So I've had them quite a few years, but I'm very surprised with the spray. It can be very fine and I love it. So it's perfect. Instead of buying a spritzer, you can buy that, and of course you can get it in your pencil case. So you could put this in your pencil case and you can use it, and I think I like it better than the bought one. So I'm just going to rub that under there so I'm comfortable. So because I've sprayed them so much, you can see the consistency. Oops, beg your pardon, there is the red one gone. Sorry guys, there's the red one there. So you can see it's a bit gooey, it's a bit sticky, but we're going to get some colour on there. Now you can see I am not going to get a nice, it's a bit blobby, but we're going to go for it. I'm going to put a little bit more water to it because I do want it to, so I've actually filled the little, it's about 3mm, so I'll show you what I'm doing because they're not well pigmented. We've got to kind of get to the, you see, it's not. So what I want to do, I shouldn't have done this with my best brush. I did have an older brush ready. We need to kind of, I'm going to get rid of that, I think. Just a minute. I'm going to get an older brush. I just want a cheapy brush, damp. Right, now I can get in there. So what I want to do is to loosen all that paint. Show guys. I need to loosen all that paint. Not really bothered about this because I'm going to get rid of it, but I need to loosen it so it's going everywhere. And it feels a bit, you can definitely feel the gumminess in whatever it is that's there. So I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to see if I can pick up. It might be better to actually move some across, because that's not the consistency I want, that's the consistency I want. So we'll move some across slightly better. And it's not easy working with this particular just let me have a very quick look at this, see if I can do something about this. The lighting seems to be better there. So I'm actually going to go in with a smaller brush. They're kind of not sticky, but you can tell the pigment's suspended in a not particularly nice solution, so they're going to be a bit harder to work. So I think I'm going to have to stay with a small brush. So I've got a bit more control. So we'll go under there with darker. And this is where I don't mind put my brushes on the top of my brush. So I'm not putting paint all over the brush, it's just halfway up because I want a bit more control. It's a nice pink colour, very easy, just wet them a bit, mix them up. So I think once you get used to them, I have had a little play with this one, but it was quite a while ago. I think I did a video about a year ago about it, and I've been meaning to use these up, and then I keep thinking, oh, I'll just wash them out, but tight Yorkshire Lass, I just can't do it, because at the end of the day it's colour, and if you can't afford expensive paints, for goodness sake, don't let that stop you. Buy the cheapest you can afford. Most of my things I buy second hand or I save up. I've had a lot that I've had for 20-30 years. I have a paintbrush that I had when I was 16, and again that inspired, I trained as a graphic designer, and I finished the year that they introduced digital. So everything we did we had to do by hand, but that taught us to draw very well and control of what you see to what comes out at the end. So I love the colour. And actually I've used very little of what I came out with and hardly touched, except for I've just wiped paint everywhere. I've just wiped paint everywhere with my brush. So it stains, does this, whatever it's probably like an ink because it stained my white. It doesn't rub off like watercolour. So it's got some kind of, yeah, I stained my my shelf. So we'll have a look at another colour. There's a ready one, and again they've dried out a bit, but what I'm going to do is take a bit of the colour where it's sticky and I'm going to put it in a palette, I think, because it's too difficult to work with. This is a different pink. This is a pink. So again I can put that in there. So we probably could colour a whole colour book with this. You can see it's a bit kind of icky. It's not behaving itself, but that's fine. You've got to get a good mix on it, and then I didn't want to do it with this particular brush. Again, a practice, so that's the red, pink, this is the paler pink. So again, we don't have to do any mixing, which is quite nice. We can just wet it. And again, although it's wet, it's not saturated, so I don't think it's going to go through. We'll have a look. Now I remember last time I actually quite liked these, but I'm so used to easiness that when you've got something that you've kind of got to work a bit, it's a bit of a pest. Because you know, I could take this colour here and I could go right round with it and it would be fine. But because I am having to go back, if you're used to using colours, it's difficult. But it's £1. And it's the palette that I want. I want the palette, and I think these are about £8 to £10, the palettes, for inks and thin palettes. So I probably bought these for the kids as well, actually, but I used to always nosy about the pound shop because you can pick up acrylics and you can pick up colour books as well. My first colour books, were from the pound shop, and some of my favourite pictures, images are there as well. So again, but I just wanted to show the pink flamingo colour, which I don't think I've actually found yet, inspired the actual. So this is supposed to be a red. It's a red, but it's got a pink in it. So I think we can go paler. So if we look for the palest pink, so it's quite nice to have this palette. I'm not technically mixing anything. I'm just using the palette to get the watercolour to a consistency that I like, which is, at the moment it's like double cream. I like single cream. So we've got a paler pink now coming down. I might go to a slightly stronger brush, I think. Have a go with this one, see what happens. I think I like my other ones. You need to get it to the consistency of single cream, and I work the same in oils, I work the same in acrylics and watercolour. I'm very boring. I like this consistency, and you can also use the same brushes. I use the same brushes as well, but I am careful with them. I don't use my sable, I have to say, but my cheapy ones I do. So I think we can even go to a white one now. Just see if I can get rid of this. Oops. Now we have a white here and it's dried, so I'm just going to see if I can get a little bit of So I've put a bit of this pink with white. So this is the pale pink and this is, so we can get some, you can mix the colours. So that's a very pale pink now. And again, I've watered it down. So while we've got this pale pink on here, we can do this. And then go back to our other pinks. So that's quite nice. Could you pass me the little, if I move that on there and move that, is it possible for you to bob this in that box safe and just put the green tray up here so I can get to the green tray, please, darling? Thank you, that would be brilliant. Yeah, you do need to move everything. Thank you. I should build that up. Thank you, that's perfect.
Do you want another cup of tea or coffee?
A tea with 2 sugars would be nice. Thank you, darling. Thank you, Parker. You didn't say yes, my lady. Sorry. Sorry, darling. I've only been funny. Not been funny. I've been funny. Bless. Poor hubby, what he has to put up with. I'm going to put that there. If I could just... Oops. What I'm trying to do is get that so I don't have a shadow. Definitely trying not to have a shadow, but it's not working particularly well. Sorry, guys. So they dry. Let's have a look on the other side. Yeah, they don't go through. There's nothing there at all. Absolutely nothing there. There's a slight bit of dampness because I'm working slightly, it's a bit kind of gooier than they would. They're kind of going on a bit thicker than I normally have. So we'll do the other little one now. I'm not crossing over every 5 minutes. So I'm kind of taking that one back. So I am working slightly wetter. So you've got to kind of clean the. You've got to clean the brush because it wants to be wetter, and it makes a bit of a difference. But if you can see, that's going on really wet, and I don't normally work this wet. So you'd be okay. You couldn't do this in the Bennett Klein ones in the mushroom book because you can see there is that bit of water there. I would think you could get all these colours out of the darker red just by adding water, and then you would have more control. But the colours are gorgeous. I put my I've replaced my water with my tea. I nearly dunked my cup in my tea there. So we're using kind of, I'm using slightly better than I would. Maybe it's better to kind of just I'm just touching. If you can see, that's still shiny wet, that. So it's a bit wetter than I would normally wet. This is probably, you want to see the page wet, and then you want to see it dry in front of your very eyes. That's the amount of dampness. So we're working a bit wetter. You can see there's a very slight, you can tell it's damper, but of course this Johanna one will take that. So I think we need to work. These paints are going to last forever. These paints are going to last forever. So I'm going to take a bit of red and see if I can water it down to nothing. Oops, I can't do it with this brush. So this is the rigger, the Dalerana rigger, and this is number 1. Now I've been using this quite a lot recently. What I'm trying to do is to get the paint to the consistency I want, but then kind of not use it as wet. You see it's too wet, is that really? So I'm going to have to, you have to waste it, you have to dry the brush on a baby wipe, because you just can't do that. So I need a bit of that red. So these paints would last forever. It's not going to be a quick job, but the beauty of it is that's a bit better. So I've got back to my rigger now. And these, so what I'm doing is the old-fashioned way, dunking in there, twisting on a baby wipe with a damp brush, and then going into a damp, this is a red I've watered down, it's not a pink. So I think the pigments are going to last a long time. Now whether I can do the same thing with it. So what I'm trying to do is just I need to leave that a bit alone now. So we can and this is the same red, this is the darker red, so again look, it goes paler. So we can get all these colours from this dark red, and because of the rigger it just gets, so that's a better consistency, so you can have your same control over it. So we've got a really nice effect here. Let's have a look, see if we can just put a little bit of I haven't used the other one, this is the bigger set, so I'll just put that there a minute. I'm not sure. I've got anything else that's pink. I'll try this little flower. I think I've had enough of pink. I think we want to leave the pinks. I think it could be a how many colour book pages can you get out of a pound shop? So we'll take a bit of that green. So you need to take a little bit, just a tiny bit of colour. So it doesn't really work wetting it all. You want a tiny bit of colour, a damp brush, and that's a very pale one, that one. Yeah, I don't like that because when it gets too sticky, it's not watered down enough. And it's purely because of the pigment. They're not the easiest things to work with. Again, this is going to be a bit, you see this is too wet, so I'm having to wipe colour off the brush onto a baby wipe because the colour book page is They don't like too much. So there is a way of using them. It's just they're just not as easy as just touching that little bit of colour. And the idea is I really want the palette. I want the palette, but I thought I would just do this. When you get them to the right consistency, but again that's because of the binder. So you can do it, you just have to play about with. Oh, hi Picola! It might have done it one time, Picola, but they're just from the pound shop. They are really cheaps. There's no particular brand, it's just from the pound shop. And that's why they're kind of really, they've got like a stickiness to them. So you could get, it's the palette. If you're going to buy these children's pound shop ones, you're not looking at the paints, you're looking at the palette. Now this is quite thick. This is just normal, and this is quite a thick one here. So we'll do this one. But what you'll find is it's a bit wet. So obviously the Johanna Basford one would be fine. But you probably do quite a few colour books because you have to water them down so that they're the right consistency. And then when you've watered them down, you lose the colours because we just need the colours. But it's all to do with the cheap binder or the fact that it's a binder. Again, if you do the baby wipe, touch the colour, it now goes to nothing now. Because it's so difficult to control. It's designed to be a lot wetter. And of course we don't want to do that in a colour book. It'd be fine if you give it to, you could even use these on the Linda Ravenscroft. If it was watercolour, they'd be fine because you can water them down and get them going a bit. And let's put a bit of this, I've got some blue here, so let me put some blue out. If you mix your own colours you might be better because you can start with a darker blue and by the time you've watered it down, damp brush, pick up colour. And we've got a leaf here. So again, it's still too wet, is this? Colour books don't like water. But you can do it if you persevere. They're not easy to use though. It's not like just touching a bit of colour and then going for it. But I just wanted to show you can use them, but they're probably more difficult because these are £1 and the we've got these are £1 and we've got the Winsor Newton Cotman tubes. If you get them at £99 or £3, so much nicer. I know you've got more colours here, but they're difficult to work with because you've got to get them wet in order to get that pigment going, and of course that's just not really an option in a book, in a colour book. But if you wanted to play, that's fine. That's what they're designed for. So we'll do this one next. I suppose it'd be quite good in a mandala because you can get the consistency of colour. It doesn't change No, I haven't tried them with a water brush. I've not tried, but I think you might not work with a water brush, but we'll try it in a second. So I did see a lovely blue on there somewhere, didn't I? I'll try it with a water brush. It might work slightly better having a damp brush to start with. And that's gone down as pink, not the purple that it looks. Just again, you have to rub the palette to get the colour going. It's supposed to daub it on like this, you see, and most colour books do not like daubing. There is definitely a stickiness in this binder. So just go to this one and do this one. Oh, it is a different flower. I can do that. So I'll just have a try because the water brush might be better actually. Because I've had to do, again, it's still wet. Well, normally the way I work, that would be dry. So there isn't a crinkle. There is a slightness, and you can feel that it's cold. So it's not drying straight away. Oh, hi Kingo, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Anybody else popping in? I'm playing with my, I asked Toby to kind of wash these away. I'll pan out a bit because you can't see how gooey and sticky they are. Where really, I bought it for the palette. So I'm using this one. Because I wanted a palette for inks and for my Hydrus. Oh, I must have broken that one. It's broken, it's that one. So I picked up these children's paints and I was colouring in the Johanna Basford. But it is, I'm trying to activate them. I sprayed them with water and it's because of the binder. The binder is cheaper and there's not as much of it. But I wanted to show that if you wanted to start to watercolouring and you didn't want to spend a lot of money on expensive things, in case you didn't like it, you could do it this way. And I was looking for my ruler. And just bear with me. So I mean, it's dried now. Ooh, only just. It's dried, and there's some nice pinks there. It hasn't gone through, but they're just a bit more difficult to use. So I've just purchased another little bag. I know I'm opening of it, and I was putting my paintbrushes. This one is slightly different, but it still has the binder, and it's a bit smaller. But you can still get a colour brush, and I put all my paintbrushes in it because I thought it was a good idea. So the watercolour brushes are in here, but obviously I might want to start using some of these. I might use these three, I think. So I put the brushes in here, and you just kind of push them out and they come out. But I was doing an unboxing earlier, and this one is the oopsie. But I was very surprised because I'd forgotten that the the sleeves come out. It's slightly smaller than the other one. Try not to get cheap paint on it. Just let me get my paintbrushes out. The idea was that you only get one paintbrush out at a time, and they would be safe, like your pencils. So that's why I popped them in there. And they are quite nicely snugged in there, not going anywhere. But I didn't realise that you could get a colour book page in this one. The Hannah Carlson one and the Hannah Carlson book fits perfectly in there. And you would get, and I love the fact the sleeves come out. They sit so lovely. This one was a bit cheap. It was 18. The other one was 22. I thought it was. It wasn't. And the beauty of it is that if you pick it up by its handle, this one is a bit smaller. It does 180 pencils rather than 216. But it does alleviate the fact that I can use the Derwent art bags for something else. So I'm just going to put those in there. I think I might get this set out because these bristles are a little bit stronger, and I think that's what we need for these cheap paints. Oh, sorry, Piccola. Pound Shop is a dollar shop. We have Poundland, Pound World. It's basically a pound shop. Or a dollar shop. The children's cheapies. The children's cheapies. So I was going to try with a water brush. That's my number one. I'm going to try with a water brush. I think maybe this might be a little bit better. So it's a little bit damper than normal, and the paint went everywhere, and it stains. I've stained my shelf. I touched the brush, and I can't get that off. Probably will with detergent, but it doesn't wash off. So although these are children's ones, they're a little bit strong. So I thought I'd have a bit of a play. I really want, I was tempted to buy the Tim Holtz, but I bought them years ago because I thought I wanted the trays. So I really wanted them because there's 48 on here, and they're about 4mm thick, 3 or 4mm thick, and I wanted to do the hydrous in them and inks. And this one is a bit deeper, actually. These are a bit deeper, so I was just going to measure them. I thought I'd just try them in a colour book because I was going to throw them out, but I just can't bear to throw them out. I have played with them before, but they're going to take an awfully long time to use, probably about 20 colour books, so I may have to bite the bullet and throw it out. But there's no reason why you can't give it to your children or your grandchildren and just say to them, keep the palette for me. But we call them pound shops, cheapy shops. So they were probably at £1. These, they were definitely not more than 2. We have a pound shop that sometimes sell things for 2, but these were in the cheapy children's section. But it was the palette I was looking at, not the colours. But having said that, there's quite a lot of colours here. They're a bit sticky though, and I'm used to having a lot of pigment and there's a lot of binder, so you're using more water. But I'm getting away with it a bit. It's fine. It's a bit wetter than I'm used to working, but again, this Johanna Basford page can handle that. And I'm getting some quite nice colours as well. But what you want is that what I'm trying to explain is these are children's, so you can tell instantly the binder. The binder is different. I can't find my little ruler. Excuse me, a quick slurp. I'm looking for the ruler so that I can measure. Oh, it is in here. I just wanted to measure what they were, but I'm pretty sure it's a couple of millimetres. but plenty enough for mixing inks or just leaving inks to dry. Hydrus would be brilliant. A thin layer of Hydrus left to dry would be fab. And I bought them because I want to put my tubes and my other watercolours in here, and it's stuck up with the Hydrus. Whereas these Hydrus, it's just a basic coating of a few drops. I can mix all my colours. So I've got 21 there, and I've got 18 here too for 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So there's 18 here, and I've got 21 here. So, you know, I've got all my Hydrus, and I can put them in here and in here as well, because once they're dry, you just tip them up. Obviously, you have to wait for them to dry, but a few days, and now that will be dry. So I can put the same amount of pigment. So I'd love to keep these colours because you can use them. It's just I'm desperate to use them for other things, and then I've got these palettes, and I don't have to keep buying 10 of these. So that was the idea. So I'll show you with a water brush. Now the water brush, I did it earlier. The colour goes up here, and I'm always never happy with that. I have wet these, sprayed them, and they've kind of gone to a blob. But again, it's a blob we don't really want because we've got more binder, and we've got, you see, it's quite thick now, and this is a thin brush. And it's also just pure full on colour. So they feel like oil, that's what they feel like. They feel oily, so it feels like you've just shoved some olive oil in it. You haven't got that lovely flow, and the reason is the binder. Now the colours are okay, but the pigment's lovely, but you've got this cheap binder. So these would be on the far end scale, and then in the middle, this end you'd have the Cotman watercolours, and then this end you'd have the professional watercolours. These are kind of really off the scale. If some have got 100 grams of pigment, or 100 times, these have got like half. That's basically, there's very, very little pigment and tons of binder, and that's why it's kind of it's gooey. Now you can water these down in here, but then now we've just got water. So the trick is to get them to the consistency where we can use them. But now that is a fully activated brush, and it's a bit too wet for me. It'll work, but instead of having a point on the end, I've just got full colour. But you could still use them, but the best thing to do is give them to your children or grandchildren and let them use them. And we can mix colours. So I've got this runny red here, and we can put a bit of brown to it to kind of darken it down. You see, they don't really like to be mixed. These are probably not as nice as the other ones, even though it's a pound shop. Yeah, you see, they're going now. Look, because these have been. See how sticky they are? And then when you've got water to them, and I've been using an old brush, now I've got tons on here now, far more than I usually have. And it's going in, it's having to go in here, and I don't want it to. And I certainly don't like this on my water brush. You see, it's still coming out, look. And if you do this with your brushes, they come back to haunt you, so you really don't want to do it with even your water brush. So I'm going to put that there. So I've got these brushes. I was using the other ones, but they're no good. These are Royal and Langnickel. Now they were actually quite a few pounds each, but it's a round. But they are a bit. I know they're a bit stronger, a bit rougher. So I'm going to try and play with these a bit because I want to pick some colour up. So I've sprayed these quite a few times. We've done our pink flamingo. I've got the green going here. I've added some darker green to it. Let's add that blue to this green. and we need a leaf. So you see, it's difficult. You see, it's difficult to get the right consistency for your colour books because we don't want to use too much water. So I can put a bit more. They've probably dried out a bit now, actually. But I said I didn't buy them for the paints, I bought them for the palettes because I didn't want to pay for an expensive, and it's not particularly nice to pick on Tim Holtz, but they're £8 to £10. This was £1. And I wanted it for the palette. Now, it's probably a very, very beautifully well-built thing because most of Tim Holtz stuff is. But I don't really have £8 to waste on here. I'd rather have £8 buying some other things. But I wanted to use it for my... So that was... You see, you get a bit wet. You start getting wetter and wetter until eventually you... You can still mix the colours together. Oh, that's a nice flesh colour, actually. But I wanted to show that you can do. So if they will be fine. I'm finding them difficult. But if you've not used watercolours before, the trick is this is a bit wet even for a colour page. But you can get some beautiful, beautiful colours. You just have to kind of think slightly differently. And is that the smallest brush I have? I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, this is the number 4. I don't think this set fares much better. Oops, put that over there. So I did spray them and they've kind of dried again. So I'll spray them again and then I suppose you could try to fill them and mix them. Now, I don't like mixing them with this particular brush. I like using an old brush. I've got an old cheapy brush here. So what was I using? This yellow. So we can try and kind of really scrape to the bottom. And again, you can tell there's a binder in there that's keeping it. You're using a lot of water. And it's kind of ugh. But I wanted to show that you can do this. I'm going to use my cheapy brush because it seems to. So in theory you could buy a cheap set of pound shop brushes or Dollar Tree brushes and a cheap children's set. But again, there's some really nice soft colours. But I really want it, so I asked hubby. I mean, there are some lovely colours. There's a blue here. And as I said earlier, you know, you've got 6 blues and 6. But I really wanted the it's a grey blue, that. It might have got a little bit better. And again, I've used a cheapy brush for this. It's just a bit more difficult to stay in the line a bit because you have to push this paint about quite a bit. But we can get some really nice colours. So we'll try going in there with my Art Master 55. That's quite a lot, a smaller brush there. And it's difficult to push about the page because it's not the right consistency still. And once you've watered that binder down, you end up with quite a sticky consistency. But they're okay for a practice. I think it probably will take me 20 years to use all this up in a colour book page, so I think I may have to give them to hubby to wash down the drain, and I may just have to accept the fact that they have to go, because I really want to use them for mixing 47 hydrous colours and for mixing inks as well. But that's a very pretty blue, is that one? Very pretty grey blue. But again, it's still wet. Now normally my pages would have been dry. Now this particular book, the Johanna Basford Magical Jungle, can take that. Let's see if we can just put a bit of black. See if this black going a bit. That's quite coolish. I'm going to just see if I can go back into here and see. We're far too wet, so I'm having to. When they get very, very diluted and very, very thin, you can start doing some nice things with them. But again, I don't want to spend the next 20 years trying to use all these colours up. So I've made a very, very thin black, and I'm twisting it on a baby wipe, and then that's giving me kind of a darker wash to go over, so that's quite nice. But you'd probably find it would take you quite a long time to do something with any detail on. So they're okay, but as I say, I really want. So I'm going to ask hubby. I don't really think I want to finish this page with these really, because it's going to take a long time. Because I do have an olive there, but every conceivable, it's just flat colour. But as I say, they're okay for a practice, and then if you think, but I think you might struggle with them. I don't know how children cope with them. I never bought these for my children. My children had my paints. Because I gave my daughter a set of those Neos, and they're £60 now for 15. Actually, I think they're 30 for 10. I think they're 60. And I saw her using them the other day, and she was just throwing them around and using them, being creative. And I looked at them thinking, I can't buy those anymore. But I just had to let her do it because she comes out with some beautiful stuff. And I paid £15 for them 25 years ago, before the Neo 2s came out. So I can't complain. I bought a set for £15 of chunky Neos. And I have to not think that I can't replace them for less than £100. I like the colours in here. There's a nice olive, and it's harder work, and of course it's a flat colour. And then when you start rubbing twice into things, this is when we get into difficulties. So have you got any questions? There wouldn't be any point to depot them. They're only about 1 millimetre thick, I think. If you look at this one, they're only about 2 millimetres. There's only a thin coat. And what would I pop them into? Something expensive? They are, for me, they are hard to use because they just don't. They don't make watercolouring in a colour book easy. They just really don't. It's just the nature of them. You see, when you get them thin like this, you go over your lines because you don't have that lovely flowing consistency of single cream, and that's the consistency for watercolouring. You've got like a dried up marker that's scratching all over the place. And they just look like the sticky glue. But they are children's, you see, as I say. And for £1, I just have to grin and bear it and say, let's get rid. Which I know I don't normally do, but I've tried every brush and it's going to take me days to do this page. Whereas I can do a beautiful one with Hydrus on Peerless in a day, a couple of hours. And there's no creativity, I'm just slapping paint on. And I hate it. I can't do it anymore. I just hate it. I just hate it. And I bought these yonks ago. I think when I first started making videos, I did a very early version of this. And I probably did them in here, actually. When you think that's derwent watercolour, and I didn't waste a scrap. I just really don't want to work with them. I don't know which one it was. It could have been that one, actually. It's when I started and I just couldn't carry on because they just drive you nuts because they won't do what you want them to do. I mean, it is quite a pretty page, is that? And I like the colours. So for a £1 shop, it's fine, but they drive me, they're just a bit too sticky. And again, that's a lovely blue colour. That is a grey blue colour. So you're not mixing any colours. So if you want, the idea of the video was to use a £1 shop palette to repurpose it for Hydrus, instead of buying an expensive one. But in the meantime, use the inks. Sorry, use the paints. So you see how sticky they are? Now I think I like the clear one better than I like this black one. So I could keep that one. And I've broken this one though, that's the only thing. I must have cracked it, I don't know how I've done it, but I've cracked that. But a bit of plastic will be fine. But they are easy to open. And it was, instead of buying a Tim Holtz one, no offence to Tim because he brings out some gorgeous things, but I'd rather spend £8 on something else and £1 on these. And it doesn't really matter what I've got my Hydrus in, they always are wonderful. So it would be, the idea of the video was to show you can do it with the £1 shop goodies, also to repurpose things. If you've given this to your children or your grandchildren, you just take the palette and then you probably end up with it looking like this, and then you can wash it out. And then I wanted to show that you can use them. I'm just struggling a little bit, but you can use them. But the idea was, if you had hundreds of the beautiful, expensive pencils, drawing pencils and colouring pencils, and you wanted to try watercolouring, instead of buying expensive paints, you could buy these and you could have a play. Oops, my light's gone funny now. That was the idea, to show you that you can get some quite nice colours from some cheapy things, and then if you like it, you can then give these to your children and buy 6 colours and mix your own colours. And of course, when you've washed this out, you can put your tubes in here, and you don't have to buy an expensive, because they'll dry out, and then you'll have pans of nice watercolours. Oh, thank you, Picola. So I just thought I'd show that you can get some nice colours from these paints, and then when you've used them up, you can then use the palettes. And see, I wet them and wet them and wet them. They should hopefully have gone to something, but I'm having to kind of wet them again. You can see there's a stickiness. So they're fine for what they are, but don't think you're going to get rid of them. I think there's about, you see, there's about 3 or 4 millimeters of paint in that one. These are a bit deeper, so I'd say there's about 2 millimeters of paint on here. But they're fine. I mean, everybody's got somebody they know, children, that can play with them and then just give you the palette back. So thanks for watching.